From the campus of Iowa Western, you're watching your hometown information station, CBTV 17.
The following program is the first Legislative Coffee of 2012, held on January 28th at Woodrow Wilson Middle School. The Legislative Coffees are designed to give all chamber members, public officials, and citizens an opportunity to hear the latest news from the legislator and have their questions and concerns heard by their representatives. The program runs just under an hour and a half.
Well, good morning. My name is Mitch Wright, and I'll be your facilitator today. And I want to welcome all of you. And I do want to remind you that this is a Chamber of Commerce function, and we all have our political beliefs, and that's great. But the time is to listen to our legislators now. If you have a different opinion, we'll be here until 11 o'clock. You can discuss with them privately. But as I said, we are here to hear from them. Our format is the same as last year. We take questions in the back. You're welcome to fill those out. We'll get to as many as we can. We'll try to hit as many different topics. And then you'll be asked for a follow-up if you have a follow-up question. And that is a question, not a comment or a statement, but a question. We do have several petitions over here for people that are running for office. You're welcome to look at. They are separate from the questions. Candidates may have those on their person and may ask you to look at those. So with that, we do want to welcome our legislators. Mary Ann Newsom wasn't here last week, so we will begin by letting her have the opening statements this morning.
Working? I guess so. Good morning. My name is Representative Mary Ann Hanusa, and I represent roughly the eastern half of Council Bluffs inside the city limits. And thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you to our sponsors and to Principal Bideroff of Wilson Middle School and for hosting us this morning. This is a great facility, and the library was a great location for many, many years, but the good news is that we outgrew that because so many of you are interested in coming to hear what we have to say. And I think it's kind of funny this week. I actually was carrying around the Capitol last year. I took it upon myself to question some of my colleagues in the House who represent large urban districts about the numbers who attend their legislative coffees or forums, and I never found anyone who anywhere near measured the numbers that we have every week in attendance here. And I'm very proud of that. And then so it is kind of known that Council Bluffs, we believe, has the largest attendance of legislative coffees on Saturday mornings. And then I heard from a couple of people, I heard you had to move to a new location. So the word is out there that our coffees are so large that we've had to move to a new location. So I thought that was kind of funny that I was hearing that. But thank you again for being here. I was not here 2 weeks ago. I was at a conference, an education conference in Phoenix, but I'm very happy to be here today with you. And the legislative session is well underway. We are getting very busy with all manner of issues. Chiefly, of course, the big issues that are on the headlines, whether they're property tax reform, education reform, mental health funding reform, and many, many other issues. We are heading into funnel week, and so we are reaching that point in the session where the bills that have been filed and have gone to committee need to be addressed and to come out of committee in order to be considered by the full House or the full Senate for vote. So I won't take any more time with that. I'll just thank you very much for being here, and it's good to see you all.
Good morning. I'm going to hold it so that I can, I'm kind of soft-spoken, they tell me, so I'll put the microphone up here. Thank you very much for being here this morning. I'd like to thank the sponsors for sponsoring this and Woodrow Wilson for giving us this, let us have an opportunity at this fine location. It's been a busy week. We've had a lot of subcommittee meetings, which we've been trying to get those in, as Mary Ann said, for the funnel week. Because once we get through the funnel week, then that's it for the bills. And then, of course, we'll be having the Senate bills coming over, and then we'll start working on those next. Just so you know, I represent District 100, and that's the western half and the south half of Council Bluffs and all of Carter Heights. And again, thank you for being here today.
Hi, Greg Forstall. Well, as has been said, we're looking forward toward Funnel Week, and I chair the House Education Committee, and I sit on the Ways and Means, where a lot of action is coming through us. We did get the property tax bill through out of the Ways and Means Committee this week. It's a comprehensive bill, and of course, the one feature that the reason for it being there is the commercial property tax. And what the bill does is over an 8-year period, bring it into a competitive line with neighboring states so that we can be more competitive. Also, it brings equity to property tax for schools. And an important feature for everyone is that it reins in some of the growth in property tax. If we did nothing, you would see residential and agricultural property taxes go up 4% for the foreseeable future every year. And what we've done is put that down to 2%. And over a 10-year period, it means a savings of well over $1 billion to property taxpayers in the state of Iowa. And I think that's an important feature of the bill. So, looking forward to your questions.
It is that point in the session where there's a whole lot of committee activity and not so much activity on the floor. So we haven't passed a lot of bills. We passed a few of them. The first bill we passed was a bill, we have our returning veterans, and one of the things the state has promised that we'll provide tuition assistance for those folks. So the first bill we passed, and the first bill the governor signed, was a bill. There were so many returning veterans that they had exhausted the money in that fund, and veteran students were being told that their grant would be cut in half for this second semester of the year. So we provided a supplemental appropriation for that. They will get the full amount that they originally expected to get, which is about 90% of their tuition. So I think that's kind of proof that when you identify a problem and you want to be responsive to it, two parties can work together along with the governor and get a piece of legislation passed quickly. So those heroes that have served our country coming back and looking to transition to civilian life have an opportunity to get good training. So I think I'll just stop. Well, let me also just there might be a few new people. When we talk about the funnel is this mechanism where by a certain point in the session, by a certain date, a bill has to have made it out of the committee of origin, the committee, either the House committee or the Senate committee, by a certain date. And if it's not out of committee, it's dead for the rest of the session, and we'll have to take that up. There are, of course, kind of escape clauses for when certain things come up. But that funnel is 2 weeks from yesterday. That's the first funnel. The Senate file has to be out of the Senate committee, and the House file has to be out of the House committee. And then there's a funnel later on where then they have to pass those. The House has to pass their bills to the Senate, and we have to get it out of committee by another date. And so when you hear us make reference to the funnel, it is this ever-narrowing set of bills that we are going to deal with in the legislative session. It doesn't apply to tax bills, and it doesn't apply to appropriation bills. So just for the legislation. Thank you.
Our first question this morning comes from Kim McLaughlin from Council Bluffs. Our administrators can barely get education reviews for each of us every 3 years. How do you expect them to do evaluations on all teachers every year?
Okay, that question is referencing both from the governor's reform of education. Currently, I think there's 42 aspects that every 3 years the teachers are graded on. 42 is absolutely too many. So we're looking at getting that down to an annual review, which is not really, it's not an overview, but it's really an opportunity for teachers to work with one another in a cooperative way it's progressing. But it would not be the equivalent of what we do over 3 years now.
And I think it's also important for people to know this is a work in progress. The governor had a set of a whole bunch of recommendations he's made to the legislature. We are working through those item by item. There will be some that the Senate agreed to that the House won't. There will be some that the House agrees to that the Senate won't. And in the end, it's really important for you to watch what's there, comment, to make your case to us as to what's good or bad about those things. I think that Greg was basically saying it's not going to be a full-blown evaluation. It's going to be an annual review and still more like a 3-year full-blown evaluation. That's the talk right now. Let us know what you think about that concept.
Jim, do you have a follow-up question, please?
No.
Okay. Our next question comes from Tom Sherbrock regarding property taxes. In light of the announcement this week of the new $1.2 billion technology center choosing between Iowa and Nebraska, how much will long-term commercial property taxes here have on the decision?
The bill that passed the House Ways and Means over an 8-year period brings the taxable portion of commercial property down to 60%. So that works in over 8 years. I wouldn't expect, but it doesn't kick in right away. So I don't know if it has anything to do, with that particular package.
Well, I'd say this. Council Bluffs has been able to compete with Omaha or Nebraska fairly effectively over the years. We've got a lot of things that have come to this community that didn't go to Omaha. There are places in our policy that are a little different from Nebraska's, and sometimes that means we lose a business to Nebraska. Sometimes that means they lose a business to us. We had a good enough set of incentives that we could convince Google to come here. So I think it's probably a toss-up. It would be great to be able to get rid of everybody's taxes. That would be fine. But if we do that, we don't have community colleges, we don't have K-12 education in the state. So there's got to be some balance between taxes and supporting those things that create jobs. One of the reasons people come to the Midwest with jobs is because we have a strong work ethic in this state. Most of the time, if you're hired to work 40 hours in the Midwest, you get 40 hours of work out of the person you hired. And so we've got a good work ethic, we've got a good education ethic. One of the reasons Google came here is because we had a power plant that was there with plenty of power, and we had quite a bit of what's called dark fiber optics that doesn't have stuff running over it. So we were a good location from that kind of perspective. Was Google will be a good location, and frankly, so will Omaha for these kinds of ventures in the future. So we're going to continue to work on that. We passed legislation 5 or 6 years ago to get Google here, and I think that's worked pretty well, and those are pretty good jobs. They also need things like, what does Google need? Well, they need both water and they need heating and air conditioning technicians. People like it's a chilled water cooling system. If you think about computers, if you think about a server farm, it's really nothing more than that laptop that you've got on your knees. And you know how hot that gets if you've got a laptop on your knees? Well, that's what Google needs more than anything is refrigeration technologists. So if you've got a community college that's nimble and strategic and able to work to create the skills for the jobs that those folks need, it's a great opportunity. And that's one of Iowa's biggest selling points is we have a strong community college system that trains workers and retrains workers for these jobs. So I think that's I think that gives us a leg up in one area and maybe a leg down on the property tax side. So and everybody wants to do something about property taxes. So we'll see how that works out.
Well, Senator Bronsall is quite correct in saying that we do have many things in the state which are very much an enticement to businesses looking to come into Iowa, and we do people have referred to Iowa as a you know, great unknown secret. Well, we don't really want to be that secret. We want people to know what a great state this is to raise a family, to come for education, to you know, to retire in, and those are all wonderful things that we already have in our benefit. But one of the things that is a problem is our high rate of commercial property taxes, and it is a factor that businesses look at when they are trying to decide whether to come to this into this state. We have a very wonderful director of economic development, Debbie Durham, who is from Sioux City, and she is the director of the authority, the new Economic Development Authority, and she really is looking for ways to think outside the box as far as economic development in this state. And I have a lot of confidence in her, and I know that there was a business that just recently went to, was between Iowa and South Dakota, just recently went to South Dakota, and we need to work with our economic developers as well to be able to provide the ability for them to be able to offer some incentives, not that are unreasonable, but to be able to say to businesses, you know, come in and look at our state and know that it's a good place to do business. So the commercial property tax of it is a part of it that we do need to look at to make sure that we are as competitive as possible for other states coming in, other businesses, coming into our state.
I would say property taxes are too high for not only the commercial, but also the residential as well. When I recruited for the Omaha Public Power District, I used to have to recruit nationwide. And consequently, I was trying to recruit people from the east and the west and the south. And what was really helpful was our cost of living. Because our cost of living is a lot less in the Midwest than it is anywhere else in the country. But also our education. I brought up some families from the southeast, and their children were like a year and a half behind our children in the same. You know, when they came into the 4th grade, the child was like 2nd grade, almost to 3rd grade level. And so they had to have some tutoring and remedial help to get them up to the same level that our children were. So we do have a lot of things that are going for us, but I do think that we need to work. We're all in agreement we need to work on property taxes. It's just a matter of putting it all together and coming out with a final product.
Tom, you have a follow-up question?
Okay. Our next question comes from Jeff Jorgensen regarding gas tax. It's obvious Iowa roads and bridges have been in disrepair for years. Why raise the gas tax now to pay for overdue repairs when gas prices are well over $3 a gallon? Why didn't we raise the gas tax earlier when gas prices were less than half of what they are today?
I guess for you, Jeff, it's we're wrong because we didn't do it before, and so we should have done it. And now we're wrong if we do it. I guess that's your construct for we lose either way.
We've talked about this every year. This is my 6th year in West. We talk about it every year. My position hasn't changed. The fairest way to finance the roads is by charging people who use the roads. And the way to do that is the more you use the roads, the more gas you burn. So that's how we finance the roads the fair way. Yeah, there's something I forgot I wanted to open with. And, you know, we're about soon we'll be halfway through the legislative process, and next week is going to be really messed up. And we talked about the funnel and everything, but on Wednesday, they're closing down the Capitol, and we're going to have a gala celebration, dinner, and it happens to be on my 62nd birthday. And I want to thank the governor and the vice president and the secretary.
Honestly, just getting elected
Last session, haven't been involved in previous discussions on road use tax or anything, but it's going to be some interesting discussions coming forward, and looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Well, I think we all are in agreement that the roads in Iowa, and specifically in southwest Iowa, need attention. And certainly we are more sensitive to that here because we have roads that have been, many roads that have been ravaged by the recent flooding. We do have to take care of those roads. It not only affects obviously just our drive here and there, but it affects our economic development and our ability to get things to market and farmers to get things to market and the whole transportation network. So the gas tax is something that is being discussed in both the House and the Senate. It is moving forward. Whether it will come for a vote or not, we don't know yet. The governor has said that he does not want to see an increase this year. He has not said that he would veto it. He hasn't really made a final determination. But I think at some point we do have to not continually kick the can down the road and say, well, we don't want to deal with this. And certainly nobody wants to raise anyone's taxes. But as Representative Forrestal said, this is an ability to take care of our roads, sharing the burden with people who are actually traveling. So if you have folks who are traveling through the state or in the state from Florida, from Minnesota, from Missouri or California or whoever who are using those roads and putting wear and tear on those roads, they are also going to be helping to contribute to the cost of repairing them, which I think is more fair than putting the burden totally on Iowans. So it's a topic that's still very much under influx and under discussion, and we'll watch it to see how things progress.
Jeff, do you have a follow-up question?
Social issues are gathering news. You got abortion, contraceptives, the Catholic Church, and gay marriage. In New York State, Governor Coalition.
Point of
You have a
order.
question, Jeff?
Point of order.
The legislature passed gay rights.
That has
You have a
nothing to do
question,
with the
follow
gas
up.
tax.
Why is the legislative process available here in Iowa to do the same thing?
It is.
We discussed this at length last year, and as you know, we disagreed, and we had all those discussions last year. I can't say we agreed to disagree, but we did disagree. So, but this year, it's really not a live issue at this point. All those bills from last year are still sitting over the Senate.
I'd also say there's a host of bills that the Senate passed that are sitting in the House. Bills to create jobs, bills to do things to encourage solar energy, wind energy, small solar, small wind in the state. There's bills to help small businesses with providing health insurance to their employees. The Senate has a bunch of bills that died in the House. The House has a bunch of bills that died in the Senate. That's the nature of the process in the legislature. That's how it's always been. You know, it took a decade to raise the minimum wage in this state. A decade. Because Republicans blocked it. So both parties block some funds. Both leaders of parties block funds. Sometimes that's the right decision. Sometimes that's the wrong decision. That's why we give people a vote every 4 years for Senate, every 2 years for the House.
Okay. Our next question comes from Kathy Miller regarding the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education Bill of Rights. What is your opinion on Deaf and Hard of Hearing Education Bill of Rights as it was reintroduced by the subcommittee?
Well, I actually chaired that subcommittee. This was the bill as it stands now is actually a bill that is quite a bit different from the original bill that Senator Stoddard had introduced last year, I believe, for a deaf education bill of rights. And the bill as it currently stands is a bill that is encouraging state agencies and departments to make sure that deaf education programs and opportunities are made aware to the public. It's a little bit nebulous perhaps, and actually we are checking with the Department of Education to see what is being done currently already to encourage departments, to encourage agencies to have in place opportunities for the deaf and hearing impaired to obtain government services or to be able to be reached out to. And so that's a bill that is just sitting right now, actually waiting for some feedback from the Department of Education.
I'm not familiar with the wording of the current bill, but I will say that my son attended Iowa School for the Deaf, my youngest son. Excellent institution, and I support the institution as well as the individuals that are challenged with their hearing.
Do you have a follow-up question? Okay, our next question comes from, I think it's Ginger Kuntz regarding the budget. This year, Iowa will budget about $12 billion in spending, half coming from the U.S. government. In the case of the U.S. fiscal crisis, what cuts would you make?
That's not an easy question to answer. We do get about $6 billion in grants, and probably the single largest piece of that is Medicaid, our Medicaid budget. That's what pays for poor people's health care in the state of Iowa. It pays for people in nursing homes that run out of resources. It helps provide for some of the costs of mental health that's delivered at the local level, and it's a partnership between the federal government and the state of. They do about 62%, and we do about 38%, and that percent varies depending on a state's economy. States that are in worse shape get a greater percentage share. States that are in better shape get a less percentage share. And it's a pretty complicated issue. Most of those things are pass-throughs in our budget. They come with federal strings attached to how you spend them and what you do with them. And on the Medicaid side of this, it's unlikely you're going to see much in the way of, I mean, people will certainly look at it, the way we control costs in that system is by only occasionally providing for cost of living increases for providers. So we may pay doctors less than, we do pay doctors less than we charge. And that's how that system's built. So I don't anticipate cuts in the area of Medicaid. There are other areas where there may in fact be some cuts, and we all know the federal government is challenged. Their budget runs October 1st through September 30th. We're probably not going to know what they're going to do by the time we're out of session this year, and so often we come into the legislature the following year and have to make adjustments to our budget based on what they did in the fall months as they finally passed their budget. So I don't think we have a clear answer to that question today as to what we may or may not be cutting, and I think it probably really most of it kicks into next year.
Characterizing what the feds do as a budget is generous, because there has not been a federal budget for going on 1,020 days now. Yeah, we do get, in a very astute question, recognizing the fact that we get $6 billion in federal pass-throughs, and so we have a total of $12 billion. Interesting fact, our totals that we spend on K-12 school in this current year is $4,924,300,000 and some odd cents. That's a lot of money, and basically it's over $10,000 per child. So that's very significant. And where do we cut? Just holding. We're trying to hold the budget at where we are, and even when we do that it's difficult because of the Medicaid factor. Medicaid takes a bigger and bigger portion of our available dollars every year, and that means other areas suffer. It's a very, very difficult budget year. I'm on the Education Approach Subcommittee, and it's not pleasant what we're having to do in regards to the cuts in that regard in that budget. So we do the best we can.
The House is going through, House budget subcommittees are going through line by line the individual budgets, looking for areas to trim the budget, because we, Iowans did tell us, get your financial house in order, and so we are trying to do that while still keeping in mind that we need to fund those services that are necessary to meet Iowans' needs. And Senator Gronstal and Representative Forrestal are quite right that the budget for the Health and Human Services piece of the budget does grow, seem to grow larger and larger each year, which when you're dealing with a relatively finite amount of money for the state budget does shrink the opportunity for other spending elsewhere. And while we are keeping in mind as well that there is a need to guard the resources that we do have in reserve, because we don't know yet what the federal government is going to do. We don't know if money that we had counted on from the federal government all of a sudden may not be there next year or the year to come. And so we as a state will then have to make up that difference, and we have to be prepared to do that. So it's still, the budget is still a project in flux, but we are trying very hard to make cuts where necessary, but also protect those services that Iowans need.
I'm not on the Education Committee, so I'm not involved in the day-to-day discussions that's going on, so I'll defer to my two colleagues that are both on the Education Committee.
Just a humorous fact, I always like to try to throw out a little humor once in a while, but that $6 billion federal budget, we usually give that to a freshman because there's nothing to do with it.
Do we have a follow-up question?
Yes. If Medicaid funds make up such a large portion of the federal funds, how are we going to pay for Obamacare? These will move 150,000 people to state-funded programs in 2014.
It's all a question of will. It's a question of will we continue down the road on Obamacare? Some people think we won't. Some people think we'll reverse course. It's all about, and some people suggest the whole idea of providing for health care needs of our citizens is somehow wrong, and that we shouldn't do it, and that maybe it's communism or whatever. Nobody that's saying that publicly will say, gee, let's get rid of Medicare. Nobody's saying get rid of Medicare, and we have, in essence, Obamacare is Medicare for people under the age of 65. So people are going to work through those things. We're going to continue. We have times when the enrollment on Medicaid goes up, and we have times when the enrollment on Medicaid goes down. It's a challenge for us when it goes up. If you're a family that newly needs the coverage, it's a disaster for you. So I'm going to keep our commitment. I think I would be proud of something. I've told the story many times. When I was a kid learning to ride a bike, I ran into a parked car. Who laughed? Who laughed at the 7-year-old that ran into a parked car? I ran into a parked car. My brother helped me home. My father took me to Jenny Edmondson Hospital where we met Dr. Clark. And he put me up on the table and moved my knee one way and said, did that hurt? Yep. The other way, does that hurt? Yep. Every way he moved it, it hurt, and I'll never forget his words. He turned to my father and said, I don't think anything's broken. That wasn't very reassuring to that segment. I don't think anything's broken. Do you have health insurance, Paul? My dad said, yes, we have good insurance at the bank. And I'll never forget the doctor's words. He said, well, then we'll do an x-ray just to make sure. I felt pretty darn good that day that I was a banker's son. And over the last 10 years, we've gotten to a place in Iowa where no kid in the state of Iowa has to worry about whose son or daughter they are to get access to affordable health insurance coverage. I think that's a good thing.
Ginger, just to follow up your question, since we don't know what is going to be the future of Obamacare, it's all more reason again that we guard our hard-earned tax dollars that you all send to Des Moines even more carefully, so that we are prepared, for to be able to to be able to pay for what we may have to pay as far as the federal government goes, and to continue the practice that we have begun last year of not spending more than we take in and not spending one-time money on ongoing expenses.
Okay, our next question comes from Brent Segrist regarding Iowa Public TV. The Republican education budget proposal was released yesterday and calls for a 39.5% cut to IPTV. That would be devastating for programming for colleges across Iowa. Is there hope to eliminate that cut?
Half of the states, 26 states, do not support public television, and the other states do. It comes down to making choices. I mean, do we want to have support our community colleges or support public television? And with the budget we were given, we decided that public television was the one that's going to get cut.
I did tape Iowa Press yesterday, and I said to him after the show was over, gee, this went really fast. Is that because it was only 18 minutes long instead of 30 minutes long? Because they cut 40% of the time out of it. So I think it's likely that we will work through differences. I think the House has staked out an initial position, and we'll work with them, and we'll negotiate back and forth, and we'll try and figure out, from my perspective, I think the Senate will stand pretty strong on keeping support for Iowa Public TV. I also think you'll see significant efforts in the Senate to do more by the way of community colleges. You know, there's a study from Georgetown now that says between 2012 and 2018, Iowa will need to fill 525,000 jobs in this state. And about 60% of those, so a little over 300,000 of those jobs, will need more than a high school diploma. Will need a little additional education, 2-year degrees or certification programs or training programs. 300,000 jobs that will go wanting if we don't have institutions there to train kids in the skills that are kids or adults in the middle of their life switching careers to train them for the jobs that are available. So we think there are significant challenges in the House budget relative to education. We're going to do our best to work with them to improve it.
I would just say it would be really nice to fully fund every program. I mean, every program out there has a need, or it wouldn't be there to begin with. And so we've got a lot of difficult decisions to make. We try to prioritize everything, and that's why we debate and go back and forth. And so we're going to have a lot of good discussions, and we'll see what the final result ends up being. But again, we just have to prioritize things, and we can't fully fund every program.
Do you have a follow-up question for that? No. Okay, our next question comes from Bob Monk regarding economic development. What do you hope the compromise legislation regarding economic development will look like regarding incentives?
Hard to tell right now. The governor has proposed $25 million for incentives. If you look back over the last 40 years in Iowa, every one of those years we had somewhere between $15 and $40 million that was set aside as an incentive fund. People not incorrectly criticize incentive programs as something that picks winners and losers. So we incent somebody or we don't incent somebody else. So people look at that, and it's not unreasonable to be critical of that. And some folks suggest that we unilaterally disown it, that we just simply say we're not going to play that game anymore. There are 49 other states that do play that game. And when businesses come here and it's right on the margin and you have a state fund that's able to kind of push it over the margin, even though you're picking a winner, in that case, at least you hope it's a winner, I certainly understand the criticism of that, but I can't see us unilaterally saying, we don't care and we'll let Nebraska throw an extra dollar at somebody and get them to locate on their side of the river instead of ours. So I think the state, like it or not, and I don't particularly like it, I'd much prefer the marketplace just operate out there, but sometimes that's what it takes, is a little bit of difference. Like I said, 49 other states are competing to keep these jobs from coming here. We've got to be prepared to at least be part of that game. So I think on our side of the Capitol, the Senate's going to try and figure out a way to provide the resources so that we can be engaged in that effort to create jobs in this state.
It is certainly my hope that we are able to come to some sort of compromise to give the opportunity to our economic development folks who are very hard-working individuals, so that we are a player at the table, as Senator Gonsall says, because I think sometimes the word incentive seems sort of like an evil word or something under the table, and that just isn't it. But you do have to have an ability to be able to at least level the playing field with other states who are competing for these jobs. And we still have a great need for there are a lot of Iowans who are unemployed, underemployed, and we have a lot of wonderful things to offer in this state. So we do need the ability to be able to compete with other states. And I know in some cases, I think South Dakota, the governor has a fund, a discretionary fund that he himself can use to lay chips on the table and so forth. And different states do it differently, but I do think that Iowa needs to not put itself at a disadvantage when we are trying to negotiate to bring businesses into the state.
I would agree with Representative Hanusa. It's particularly important for us in southwest Iowa, being right across the river from Omaha. And so it's real important that we try to maintain that and do better if we can.
Bobby, a follow-up question?
Our next question comes from Hirsch Rodnowski regarding nuclear plants. Sorry if I screwed up your last name, Hirsch. Where do you stand on rate increases for consumers to cover the cost for the utility companies to construct new power plants in Iowa?
The House has passed that, and it's waiting. Another one of those bills waiting over there in the Senate. The question here is baseload. I mean, we do have all these wonderful windmills out there, which are moving quite well today. But there are those cold nights when there's no wind, and so we have to have a baseload. And traditionally, that's been supplied by coal. And coal, of course, is a dirty name, I guess, because it's supposedly dirty, but that's what we have. And when we look at replacing that down the road, one of the factors is nuclear. And we were well down that road, and then of course that thing happened in Japan, which caused a lot of people to worry a little bit. But I still think in the long term, and we have to think really long term, like decades down the road, when neither Mike nor I will be in the legislature. We have to think about how we'll
Speak for yourself, Ed.
I don't think you'll be there 3 or 4 decades. No, I won't be. And I'll voluntarily not be there.
The bill that came from the House, I do think lacks protections for consumers. I think people in the Senate are looking at this. I'd say the skepticism has raised from where it was last year. But I'd also say what Mid-American Energy is talking about is a modular plant. Some people say modular technology is untested. Yeah, it's in every nuclear sub that the United States operates in the world. So it's not as if it's untested technology. And that's what they're talking about, 48 megawatt units, and maybe as many as 20 of those at a site. They're also talking about a system, first of all, I mean, everybody knows nothing is completely fail-safe. Nothing, okay? Your own basement in your house probably has radon gas in it, through no fault of anybody. So nothing is completely safe, but the technology they're talking about is something where no human action is required to shut down the plant, where they build the containment vessel below the ground. Here's the ground. They build it below the ground, and if something bad happens, it automatically is flooded with water. So they have a lake, and it automatically fills up and stops any potential for a meltdown. So in the case of Japan, if they had that kind of technology, nothing would have happened. It would have automatically shut down the plant. And it's not, it's because it's gravity feed. It's not pumps that have to pump the water, it's gravity feed, it's below the ground level. So it's interesting technology. It's certainly something I think people are willing to take a look at. It's also this measure of how much do you have to work with the utility in terms of them generating the resources to make this work so that they can go out to the marketplace and raise capital. So there's some talk. We already have a law that allows for something called advanced rate-making principles. That's where a utility decides it's going to do something. You have a utility board makes a judgment as to whether that's wise, puts a certain set of conditions on it, and then says, we will cover your costs if you build this. This one, the part that makes people nervous is what happens if they get kind of halfway into it and then they stop and decide not to build it. This would allow something that's called QUIP, that's construction work in progress. It would allow QUIP, and if that means they can get from the ratepayers some of the money to build the plant while they're building it before it comes online. So when they built the coal plant, they didn't get any new money until it came online. So that's the question that's before the legislature. It's really essentially a question of, are the consumers going to take all the risk? Is the company going to take all the risk? Or is there going to be some balancing that? And that's what the whole argument's about. The House bill does not provide enough protection for consumers. We've already made significant changes, and if it's going to pass the Senate, we will make additional changes. And when I say if it's going to pass the Senate, it is very much an if.
And I just want to add a little bit about the technology, and I appreciate your explanation of the safety. And I would just remind everyone that the technology in the Japanese nuke plants are so old that when it was invented, Senator was in diapers.
And Edison was my next door neighbor.
I supported the bill. Again, I think this is part of economic development. We're looking ahead. If we want commercial companies, industrial companies to move to Iowa, we got to be able to provide that base load of electricity. And power companies project out many years in advance to try to figure out what kind of base load they're going to need. And so they feel that there's a need, or they would be. It costs a lot of money to build a plant. And whether it's coal or whether it's nuclear, it still costs a lot of money. I happen to work in a nuclear plant, and I feel it's very safe.
I think all three of us here did support the bill, because I think while nuclear energy sometimes can sound very scary, it's in this day and age, it's not your grandfather's nuclear energy, so to speak. It doesn't have to be with the new technology and new methods that Senator Bronsall outlined. So I think it is something that we need to look at. We need to not limit ourselves in looking at alternative sources of energy. And there may be, we obviously will negotiate back and forth between the Senate and House on what the final bill looks like. But I think this is something that we need to do for our state, to be very forward thinking and looking down the line at alternative sources of energy that are safe.
Urged me to follow up question. My question wasn't about the fee. We're talking about the taxpayer. Are you aware of what's happened in other states, and in recognition of what Senator Bronsall said, that if they come in and start building these and the taxpayers pay for them, if they pull out, you understand that we don't get our money back. You've done your homework. This has happened in other states, particularly before.
Is that a question?
Yes. Did you do your homework to know what's going to happen? Okay, so that they are allowed to go ahead and build and then pull out, and we lose the money. Correct? That's a question.
No, I think you're incorrect, and I believe that you're being fed incorrect information on that regard.
I think you're both wrong. I think there are elements in the House bill that are very concerning that way. We're going to work through those elements. So, like I said, there's no guarantee this legislation is going to come up. It is at best 50-50 that it will come up. The places that have had the huge cost overruns are plants that are building mammoth 1 or 2 unit facilities, 1,000 megawatts, as opposed to this modular design where the costs are much more modest for each of the modules. Like I said, 48 megawatts per unit. Maybe to get 1,000, you need 20 of those, and they'll do someplace between 10 and 20 of those likely if they get authorization to do this. The process of going along on a road to build a facility is one. The current law already allows a company to get a guarantee that their costs will be covered. So it's called advanced rate making. That's how we got the power plant that's down here right now. The new power plant here in Council Bluffs. By the way, you keep saying taxpayers. Taxpayers have nothing in this. It's ratepayers, not taxpayers. Ratepayers, people that pay your electric bills is where this will show up. That's what we're working through, is some protections to make sure, and for precisely what you just said, we're looking at making changes so that if it stops, and if it stops, it would stop probably in the pretty early years, and so it'd be the development costs that they're recovering, not the cost of the plant. So I think in the end we'll have something that protects consumers there. Well, let me put it this way. If we don't have something that will protect consumers there, we won't pass the bill.
Okay, our next question comes from Martha Bruckner regarding education. Would you consider trying to convince the governor that it's essential for planning to set allowable growth for education in a timely fashion?
We kind of felt like we did when we passed 4%. We think it certainly makes sense for local school districts. There's a set of things in the governor's education reform effort, a whole set of things that trigger certain things to happen by 2014. And we're going to ask schools to do more, and we're going to ask schools to improve quality, and we're going to ask schools to do a better job with teachers and teacher preparation, and make sure students can read by the end of the third grade, and all of those things. But we won't tell them how much money they're going to have in fiscal 14. That doesn't make sense to me. We should set the allowable growth. That's what the state law says, that we should set it. And then I'll just stop there.
Problem with the 4% allowable growth that the Senate so politely put out there is that there's no way that we can know we have that money. believe the superintendent enjoyed that year. We had 10% across the board cut. But irresponsible budgeting is what leads to things like, and 10% cuts when you don't have the money to back it up. And that is the reason that if we had to set an allowable growth in the House for 14 today, we would set it at 0. I don't want to do that. I want to preserve the opportunity to have a higher allowable growth in the future. And that's the reason we're going down the road alone.
Here's the deal I'll make. We'll set the $125 million aside. We've got $1 billion in the bank. We'll put it in an account. We'll take the cash. We'll lock it in an account, and we'll know it will be there. I don't think that's a very good reason not to let school districts know what they're going to get. We have $1 billion in the bank. Our reserve funds are supposed to be $600 million. We got $400 million above that. So I think we can take $125 million, which is about what 4% allowable growth costs, and set it aside for that purpose if you're worried that we'll run out of it later.
We talked earlier today about the fact that we don't know what the federal government will do, and then we have $6 billion that we hope will come down in the future from the federal government. We don't know that. Can you imagine what would happen if they cut us back $1 billion? Besides that, the House will only budget what we have in ongoing revenue. The current proposed budget out of the Senate is almost $100 billion in the red. $100 million more than we expect the state to be bringing in. That is the road to financial disaster. We will only spend the amount of money that we can expect to have coming in.
Martha, do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next question comes from Dolores Bristol regarding hold your ground. What happens if an innocent bystander is harmed?
You can come up with all kinds of scenarios. The stand your ground bill is intended to provide protection for the average citizen, law-abiding citizen. It doesn't say anything in the bill about guns. It's about using reasonable force up to and including deadly force if a person is attacked. So what it is it's a matter of just trying to broaden protection. Right now, a person is protected in their home or in their business, but not in their car. If I'm driving down the street and someone comes up and puts a gun in my face, if I stop at a stoplight, someone comes up and puts a gun in my face, I'm expected to put in reverse and back up. To me, that's not the answer. To me, I don't feel safe that way. It's just a matter of taking the protection away from the criminal and giving it to the law-abiding citizen.
Yes. I don't know a lot about this bill, that's why I asked the question. But what I perceive is that if someone thought they were being threatened and proceeded to use deadly force against that person, is there any consequence? And it was falsely. They weren't being threatened, but they thought they were. Is there any consequences? I mean, I've listened enough that if you have some gang members who decide that they're being threatened, they can go ahead and shoot the other person and nothing's going to happen to them?
Well, just because they're a gang member, they're still an American citizen. So, I mean, as far as if a person is, if they're in the commission of, or committing a crime, the bill does not apply to them. So it's just when a person is trying to protect themselves and defend themselves, and that's what the bill is intended to do.
I'm lot of things into this that aren't there. I mean, we can take any situation. For example, what happens if I'm lawfully driving along and someone runs a red light and smacks me, you know? Well, it makes about as much sense to say that applies to this law as anything else. But, and by the way, I won't be voting to do away with the red light cameras.
Okay, our next question comes from Tom Johnson regarding community college funding. Will the two parties close the gap on community college state aid and increase it over the governor's budget of $4 million?
You repeat that, Senator
Will the two parties close the gap on community college state aid and increase it over the governor's budget of $4 million?
I will.
The one area that in our subcommittee that we kept constant was community colleges. And I'm sorry to say we couldn't find their, so we couldn't hold the line in the regions, university, but community colleges we did find to the current level.
As I have said before, there's widespread unanimous support across both houses for the community colleges, because we know we're very proud in Iowa of our system of community colleges. They're excellent learning institutions, and we know that they are valuable resources for people who are re-entering the job market, changing careers, need to learn a new skill. And actually, we have certain skill sets in this state that are in critical shortage that the Department of Economic Development has made us aware of, and we are working with the community colleges to try to fill specifically those needs that businesses have that they can't currently fill. So I'm sure there will be negotiations yet to come on the community colleges, but there's always widespread support for the work that they do.
You have a follow-up question, Tom?
Yes, in this country today, we do need to support our community colleges. We're 220.
Is that a question?
Well, I just want to make a statement from the
No,
American
can't
Level
make a
Society.
statement. If you want to make a statement, you have to.
We need our colleges. We need our community colleges.
Okay. Our next question comes from Tom Holm. And Tom, if I have this question wrong, I apologize. I would like an update on state, I believe, licensing for plumbing and mechanical where it stands. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did you say mechanical and electrical?
Plumbing and electrical.
Plumbing and electrical?
Plumbing and mechanics. Plumbing
Plumbing and
and mechanics.
mechanical, okay. The law's been passed, so it's now in the executive branch. They're the ones that make the rules to implement those laws. So what is your, I guess, at the risk of breaking the rules and getting into a dialogue, what is your concern? And would you, I'll put it this way, why don't you come to me with your concern afterwards? We'll talk about it, and we'll try to, as you know, those laws were somewhat contentious, the licensing laws, and there's positives and negatives to them. A statewide license may be better than having different license in every city. On the other hand, sometimes statewide licensing boards go too far and leave too many exceptions, whatever. So I understand there's a host of concerns. Why don't you bring the specific concern? We'd be happy to work with you and see if we can get some resolution.
Okay, our next question comes from Kim McLaughlin regarding Education House Bill 17. How will eliminating standards for charter schools serve Iowa students?
House file what?
This is 17. How will eliminating standards for charter schools serve Iowa students?
No, not done.
becoming a charter school in Iowa currently. Governor's bill proposes relaxing some of the requirements, although they still would have all the Chapter 20, the employees will have all the Chapter 20 protections that they have now. So I'm not exactly sure, maybe you should talk to me afterwards about what your concerns are, because actually what the governor's proposal is very good charter school law, and learns from all the mistakes that other states have made. And so I support the governor's proposals in regard to the charter schools. One of the areas of his proposal is 156-page proposal that I can unqualifiedly support. So, by the way, just to give you progress on that, we will bring something out of committee. Something out of committee on the 20th of February, and can't tell you what that's going to be at this point in time. We've had over 20 hours of subcommittee testimony, and we've had over 20 hours past that, and we still don't have any kind of agreement. Making law is sometimes not fun.
Follow-up question?
Yeah. In the bill, there is a long list of things that can be waived for charter schools by the director of the Department of Education, and one of those on the list, there are several that are disturbing. One of them on the list is they can waive laws against discrimination. How does waiving laws against discrimination and other lowering of other kinds of standards like that help Iowa students?
Don't have a copy of the bill with me. That doesn't make any sense. I would have to read it to make sure it says that before I can comment.
Okay, our next question comes from Art Hill regarding HF 2048. Now that this passed Transportation Committee, how will you vote and why? And since this passed in such a party line manner, why does this seem to be a partisan issue?
He was whispering in my ear.
We were whispering each other's ears, I think.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure why it's a partisan issue exactly. I will be voting as I did last year. If this does come before the House, to not ban the cameras, because I think it needs to be a local issue decided locally by the representatives that you have put in office here in the city. So I don't really know why it's a partisan issue exactly, but it does seem to run down those lines.
I don't have much in the way of comment, other than, I'm looking to see if Hannafin left. Matt Walsh is still there. I guess in my view, a reduction of traffic accidents in Council Bluffs from 3,800 in 2002 to 700 last year is a good thing, and those red light cameras are a big part of that.
There was until about a year ago, there was a radio talk show host in Des Moines, and he left, and we were all really glad. A lot of us were really glad. But his replacement is pretty much the same, and he's been on this issue, and someone leaked to him the fact that I was opposed to this bill, and so my name's buzzing Des Moines right now on that, but no, I think, if it's illegal and you get caught by the camera, well, you're caught. So don't run the darn light.
I haven't formulated an opinion yet. I'm still kind of waiting because I see both sides of the issue. You've got parts of the state where, they're charging $200 for radar, used for speeding. What's next? Are they going to use it for car distances between cars and so on and so forth? I mean, that's one side of the argument. And they've mentioned the other side of the argument. It saves lives apparently in some cases, at least cuts down on the number of accidents and stuff. So I'm kind of still trying to formulate an opinion because like I said, I see both sides of the issue. So I will wait until the time comes to vote, and then I'll cast my vote.
A follow-up question? Okay. Our next question comes from Naomi Linen regarding education. A number of policies in place that make it difficult to keep and reward our best teachers. For example, when school districts find themselves making cuts, the last teacher hired is typically the first to go regardless of their job performance. Would you be willing to support changes to this policy this session?
Yes, we're certainly looking at things like that to deal with when there are layoffs, to not make it be solely a decision based on seniority. We're looking at that. And we're open to discussions about that. There are positives and negatives to any policy. So I think there's a fair shot we're going to do something about that.
Well, that is something that we need to look at, and members of school boards, including our school board here, have told me that is a concern that they have as well. So that is something that needs to be addressed.
Or the governor's bill that will probably survive, at least in the House.
No. Our next one comes from Bill Stazzoni. What do each of you think about where the state is as far as being competitive in landing new projects, and how can we structure our incentives to be in a position to win?
I think we kind of spoke to that earlier. I think we were all indicating that we have some level of support for an incentive, for a set of incentive dollars. I do think one of our strengths is community colleges and training in the state of Iowa. That's one of our big trump cards on other states. We have a great system where community colleges are able to be nimble and strategic. So if you put up a bunch of windmills, your community college can figure out the training for people that climb those windmills. For every 6 or 7 of those turbines, you need one worker to maintain and service them. And community colleges train those folks. Community colleges train the folks that do the air conditioning at Google. Community colleges train people that work at the Bungie soybean processing facility. So I think the training side of this equation is really key. And one of the benefits of the training is, even if eventually the company leaves, you've still got an employee that's got more skills than they had before. So their likelihood of being able to move to another job or get retrained again is much increased. The incentives, it's all of this kind of balance between looking at taxes, looking at incentive programs where you can make the difference, and maintaining the core services that businesses expect, like good education systems and higher education that gives their employees the opportunity to excel. So I think that's an every year, year-round effort by the state to look at those things that will make us more competitive. One of the things we talked earlier about gas tax. Think of what it means to have your highway system torn up for 25 years. Does that make sense for a community like County Bluffs? And if there aren't enough resources there to rebuild it a little quicker than 25 years, what business is going to come here knowing they're going to have bottlenecks trying to transport goods out? So I think there's just a host of things. Some of them are even a little more esoteric, having a cultural life that attracts kind of a creative economy. So lots of things that go into that, and every year the legislature does what it can to fine-tune those things. So, and this year's no different.
Well, of course, we're very interested in keeping a competitive structure of taxes, and that's why we're looking at commercial property tax, and commercial property tax in Iowa is the second highest of states, and that's not something that I think we should be proud of. But still, people do locate here. I know we're kind of excited about Jack Link's locating up at Underwood, and welcome them. And
that. I would agree. I think we kind of addressed this early on in the meeting, and I think we're all in somewhat agreement that at least we think we need to try to work together and try to do what we can.
Well, again, as we did say, Iowa has a lot of really strong competitive factors. We do need to address the commercial income tax. We need to address the ability for our Department of Economic Development to be able to have that even playing field and have some incentives to give to businesses to draw them here. But there is one thing also that Iowa has, and this may sound kind of silly, but Iowa has friendly people. And that translates into, which I think we hear all the time when the national media are here for the caucuses or other events, and you hear time and time again about how friendly Iowans are. And Iowans are friendly people. They're willing to help each other, and that translates in a business sense to good customer service. And that's something that is very critical to businesses too, who are looking to invest, as well as the entire package of taxes and roads and schools and that kind of thing. But I think that's something too that Iowans have as well. And we're a great state, and we are working hard. Our Department of Economic Development is working very, very hard to promote our state and to show off the state that we know and love, and show it to other people and the rest of the world as a state that really is first class in terms of the technology and our regions, institutions that have our universities that have really first class training programs and programs for developing new products and research. And so it's a big package, the economic development package, but I think it's something that we really need to keep at the forefront and do everything we can to give ourselves a competitive edge with the rest of the country and indeed the world.
Bill, do you have a follow-up question? No, thank you. Okay. Next question comes from Ken McLaughlin regarding Education House Bill 17. Why are you going against all research to retain third graders based on a single score on a single standardized test?
Again, you have incorrect information on this, because it's the whole literacy project starts in pre-K and is measured at every step along the way. And the idea is that even in kindergarten we can identify people who are not or having trouble learning to read, or indicate that they will have trouble to learn to read. So we begin at a very early age with intensive remediation at every step along the way, in first grade and second grade. And at every step along the way, the parents would be notified that the student is at risk of not reading at grade level. And there is no single test at the end of the third grade that is a sink or swim test that would require retention. In fact, our goal would be that no one would ever have to be retained. And there are numerous exemptions for pause, for language problems, for any kind of situation. So, to characterize that as a one-step test is entirely inaccurate.
And the emphasis is not on the third grade retention. The emphasis is on the intervention very, very early, whether kindergarten or even before, as we see that these children are struggling to read. And certainly we want to bring the community in, not just the schools, but the parents as well, to help understand that it is their responsibility as well to help their children read. It does no favor to let a child go through life or go through a school system not being able to read, and it puts them at just really an impossible unfair advantage. And so it isn't so much that, let's retain children or let's hold them back at third grade. And as Representative Forrestal said, not the goal. We hope that that never happens, but the point is to start the intervention very, very early and see the signs that are there very early on that this child is struggling with reading and working with them to move forward. And I know that our own school district is doing that as well. Many school districts across the state are. But there is a need to make sure that our students have every advantage going forward, and reading is certainly at the top of the list.
I actually think there's some good news in this whole issue. The good news is everybody recognizes that reading is important, and everybody recognizes that a robust set of interventions for kids from preschool, frankly from birth. If you're a parent and don't read to your kid as an infant, that kid's going to lag. So that effort to make sure that kids can read by the 3rd grade, I think is a good effort, a good focus. And then identifying a robust set of interventions, whether that's tutoring, whether it's summer school programs, whether it's after-school programs, all of that is very positive. I think as the question implies, nobody has a long-term study that shows retention improves outcomes. Nobody has that. Some are alleging that Florida, who's had it for several years now, is seeing good results with that. And I don't, it's frankly too early to say it's a long-term study and that you can actually justify that. Almost all, I think every study that I've taken a look at shows that the long-term impact on kids negative. Much more likely that they drop out of school, those kinds of things. So that's that piece we all look at with some skepticism, and I don't know whether we'll end up with that piece in it or not. But the good news is we are all focusing on having a robust set of interventions for 3rd graders to make sure they can read. It also gets what if you've got Albert Einstein physics and chemistry in the 3rd grade, but he can't read very well yet. Do you hold him back? Do you think that's gonna help him continue to be a brilliant physicist when you hold him back for a year and make him take 3rd grade math again? That probably doesn't work. So kids learn at different rates and learn different skills and focus on different skills. I guess I kind of feel like the concept of the state being able to define from Des Moines, in a place where half the time we butcher the English language in our own debate, that we could define what I think should be a decision between a parent, a teacher, a family, and a kid as to what's going to make the most sense for their educational achievement. And I think clearly some kids, it probably does make sense to hold them back. I think usually it'd probably be before the 3rd grade. Kindergarten or 2nd grade maybe makes some sense and doesn't have as many long-term impacts. But shouldn't that be a decision that the parent and student and the teacher figure out amongst themselves, rather than us coming down from Des Moines with a one-size-fits-all approach?
I apologize for a second speaking here, but just last Thursday, I introduced a bill that would allow a 5-year-old to repeat 4-year-old preschool. And that's been an issue because the way the law stands right now, they have to either go into a full kindergarten or they can't pay for the 5-year-old in preschool. And I introduced that so that they would be allowed to repeat that. Because when you think about it, you have a whole year's worth of children. They may have only been born 2 days apart, but they have totally different years in terms of where they're born. And so they may not be mature at that age, and to allow them that very early stage to repeat is quite a value, and I think would that one I expect to be a non-con to go right through.
Any follow-up question? No? Okay, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I'd like to give that to our legislators to maybe talk about where they're at, what's going on, and any other comments they have. So,
I really answered Dolores' question very well, so I'd be happy to talk to you, Dolores, afterwards. Regarding the stand your ground bill, I guess I just wanted to kind of close with that a little bit. I do have a copy of the bill. If anybody wants to read it, I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it afterwards. There's 15 other states that have enacted a similar bill. And I know somebody made reference to it, this will turn us Iowa into the Wild Wild West. Well, these other 15 states haven't turned into the Wild Wild West. And a couple years ago, when we improved the concealed carry law and changed it from may to shall, the same thing was being said then. And so I think this is a good attempt to try to just give people an opportunity to protect themselves. If they're in a situation that does not pertain to anybody that's committing a crime, it does not allow any protection for them. It specifically says that. And with that, I'll close on that because, like I say, I'll be happy to stick around and talk to anybody about it. We spent a lot of time working on the bill, trying to come up with a good bill. I do appreciate everybody here this morning. It's refreshing to come and have this interaction and to learn and to hear what you have to say and to be able to have discussion afterwards. Take some time to get your feedback. So when we do go to Des Moines, then we can make some decisions based on what our constituents are telling us. And, sometimes, we get kind of a tunnel vision on certain things, and so it's helpful to come here and have this opportunity to hear what you have to say. So thank you very much for being here and giving us the opportunity to do this.
Listen, I'll just be very brief too, because some of you like to come up and talk afterwards rather than in front of the whole crowd. This is great, great crowd we got here. It looked a little thin this morning when I first got here, and I was kind of like, gee, maybe the cold's going to keep people away, but it has not. So congratulations to all the hardy souls in the audience. And government's a partnership between you and us. So keep coming, keep asking us questions, keep emailing us, and we'll do our best to govern well. Thank you.
And I'd like to add my thanks for being here. We talked earlier about that funnel process. In one way, it's a pressure cooker to get everything done on time, but on the other hand, I'm really glad to get rid of this governor's school reform bill. I want to off my case and show it over there at the Senate, and so they can work their wonders on it. But again, no, I actually, there are things in there, such as the online learning, competency-based learning, that I think will be very significant changes and will help some students and actually perhaps reduce some costs and make some economies to education and quality. And the important thing is we have to maintain quality and rigor, and we will do that. It's just that it is not easy. There is so much. To change the momentum of the way education moves with this $5 billion budget here in Iowa is not easy. And I do appreciate your help in that regard. But thank you for being here.
Thank you all for being here and braving a very, very cold morning, for coming out. Please continue to stay in touch with us. If you're in Des Moines, and at the Capitol, certainly come and look us all up and send a note in so that we can come out and speak with you. And I told a couple of people who were visiting from Council Bluffs the other day, I said, if you send a note in and I don't come out, it's because I'm not at my desk and I'm not in the habit of I think it's actually very disrespectful to be at my desk knowing that there are constituents or citizens out there who want to talk to me. So even if we don't necessarily agree on every issue, I will go out and speak, and it's important that we stay in touch. Email us, call us, and as Marcel said, make sure you put the Council Bluffs reference somewhere in the subject line so that we see it right away and can respond. promptly. But again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for your continued support and supporting these Saturday morning coffees.
Again, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Hy-Vee, Ameristar Casino, Black Hills Energy, Iowa Western Community College, and today's sponsor, James A. Watson, attorney at law at CPA. I'd like to invite you back 2 weeks from today. Just a reminder, please pick up your trash and throw it away on the way out. And one last thing, as you can see, a lot of the issues discussed today have a lot of points and counterpoints, and that requires a lot of time to understand.
From the campus of Iowa Western, you're watching your hometown information station, CBTV 17.